Good evening, BookTube. This is Johnny. Thought I'd make a video today. I got a tag. I got this note on BookTube from D Books, I think. And she tagged me, and I thought I'd do the tag, even though I'm not good at doing tags since I don't read a lot of fiction. Well, if you look over the years, I've been reading fiction since 1967, 68. So I have read a lot of fiction over the years, but not as much as some of the people in BookTube. But anyway, this tag is called Travel the World from the Comfort of Your Living Room, Part 1, Getting Ready. And these are the questions. I typed them out on my computer here. Question 1, Inspiration. Part 1, Getting Ready. Inspiration. A favorite bookish character from TV or film? Well, I had to really think about this because I don't remember books that have been made into film. Now, I know there are books that have been made into film, but I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head. So, well, today, okay, so the point is, this is the answer I gave. The character Hawkeye, Nettie Bumpu, played by Daniel Day-Lewis in the movie The Last of the Mohicans. In the movie The Last of the Mohicans, the actor Daniel Day-Lewis plays Hawkeye. And in this novel by James Fillmore Cooper. The Last of the Mohicans, as I've mentioned in previous, is part of the Leatherstocking Tales. You have The Last of the Mohicans, The Pathfinder. Well, you have the Deer Slayer, The Last of the Mohicans, The Pathfinder, The Pioneers, and The Prairie. Those are many years ago. I read those, and so that's what I came up with for that question. Question 2: Travel agent. A favorite author outside your demographics? Well, I could think of a lot of authors, but I recently my wife found for me a biography of Anthony Trollope. He's one of my favorite writers. Sometimes I think if I could focus on one, there are certain writers that I would like to focus in if I could have the discipline to focus on one certain writers. And one of the writers I would like just to read, if I could, and have the discipline for a long period of time, would be Anthony Trollope. I've read Anthony Trollope off and on over the years, and I've always enjoyed his writings, and I always wish that I could get more into him, Anthony Trollope. So that was, he was a British writer, 19th century. 3, destination, a favorite place to read about. Well, what I like to read about, and the more I look at my book choices, I find myself, I really like American history. I like America. I like reading of American history. Now, I do like reading, like English history, European history, but I find myself really enjoying reading about America, the history of America. And recently I thought this book that I dream about reading someday, What Has God Wrought? The Transformation of America, 1815 to 1848 by Daniel Walker Howe. I dream of reading this, and I just wish I could get into it. It looks so good. But I like reading about America. American history. Okay, and then it says here, but then I also wrote a destination, a favorite place to read about. I like reading books about America. I like reading about Paris, New York City, and London also. 4, Takeoff, a book you read to travel to a place you've never been. Well, personally, I don't have any desire to travel anywhere. As you know, I'm afraid of flying in planes. I don't like driving unless the weather is just perfect outside, and even then I feel kind of anxious. But I like reading books about London, England, and Paris, France. And I was thinking of a book I read a couple years ago, was this book on London, a biography by Peter Ackroyd. I really enjoyed reading this about London, the biography, the history of London. I still pick this book up off and on. I started reading it last year and reading it still. The Other Paris by Luc Sente. These are the kind of books I like to read about London, England, and Paris, France. Part 2, Out and About. 5, Sights. A reading spot you want to visit. Well, I mainly I read right here in the dining room. I don't go to coffee shops. I don't go to the local library, but I like reading here at home because when I read, I can't have anything around me, any distractions, especially as the older I get. I like just being able to sit down and focus on what I'm reading and to ponder it and then take notes, write in my diary, look things up on the internet. But I have in the past taken a book to read by Lake Michigan. Since we live so close to Lake Michigan, I have over the years have taken books and read, but once again, when I go to Lake Michigan, I get kind of distracted. I want to take photos and the weather, but I prefer reading here, right here in the dining room table. 6, Taste, a food or drink you first encountered in a book. Well, I really couldn't think of anything. I got a blank, but I did think of one book that now I can't find. What's right here in front of me? I thought of The Age Letters Redux by Allen Ginsberg. William Burroughs and Allen Ginsberg, and this is about Hage, which I have here, the Hage Letters, and these are letters that William Burroughs wrote to Ginsberg when William Burroughs was in South America looking for this psychedelic kind of, I don't know if it's a mushroom or a plant that shamans use there. I have it here in my notes. The Age Letters, the drink, a telepathic, hallucinogenic, mind-expanding drug, Yage. I can't pronounce the South American word, used by Amazon Indian shamans. So I was thinking of the Age Letters. I read these a couple of years ago. I bought this when we were visiting our son and our daughter-in-law in Seattle. This came out in 2006. 7, Locals, a favorite foreign to you character in a book. Well, the only character I could think of that is foreign to myself was a character in this book. I read this several years ago. This is Laura, Workaholic or the Sexual Intellectual, a novel by Alexander Thorax. There's a character in here, the main character, one of the main characters is named Eugene Eyestone, and I really like this character in this novel, and this is a thing I dream of rereading. I really enjoyed this novel. It's a big clunker, but once you get into it, you can't stop reading it. But the Eugene Eyestone favorite character in the novel, the Laura workaholic or the sexual intellectual. So it came to my mind. 8 sounds, a word or phrase you learned in a book, any language. Well, I really had to think about this because I can't pronounce even English language. Can't pronounce Spanish language, French, Italian, Greek, Latin. But this book came to my mind. I bought this several years ago. I think it came out in... Well, first was originally published in Moscow in 1917. It was translated out of Russian in 2012 by Thomas Allen Smith. And this is called Unfading Light, Contemplations and Speculations by Sergius Bulgakov. He was a leading Orthodox theologian. And I have some of his other books. I think I have some books downstairs by him. But this is his book on Fading Light, Contemplations and Speculations. I bought this book because it, I've mentioned, I was into contemplation. And he had different chapters in here that kind of intrigued me. But one of the phrases in here is this, there's a lot of language and phrases in here that just kind of I can't really comprehend. Let me think of something here. Well, I thought how about the soft-pensicity of the creature? The soft-pensicity of the creature. How about this? The absolute in this way is made God, and out of the unconditionality absolute, he becomes the relatively absolute, or the absolute for the relative, which is in so far a kind of mirror of divine absoluteness. How about that one? Well, I'll read it again. The absolute in this way is made God, and out of the unconditionality absolute, he becomes the relatively absolute, or the absolute for the relative, which is in so far a kind of mirror of divine absoluteness. By revealing himself to the creature, God is divested of his absolute transcendence and is manifested in his operation for the creature in grace, or to use the expression of dogmatic disputes of the 14th century, in his energies. Well, there you have a phrase and some language that just is kind of hard for me to wrap my brain around. Question 9. Souvenir, a favorite bookstore you have been to. Well, here, where we live here in Holland, Michigan, but there's a bookstore in Grand Rapids that I used to go to quite a lot when I was working, and the weather was really nice. I go over to Grand Rapids, and I would go to Erdman's bookstore. Now, Erdman's they publish this book, for example. Erdman's Publishing, Grand Rapids, Michigan. They publish books, but they also have their own bookstore in one of their distributing plants there in Grand Rapids. It's a big, huge Christian bookstore, very academic. It has, because if you go to Grand Rapids, they have all these Bible colleges, they have Calvin Seminary, they have all kinds of Christian colleges, Christian Baptist seminaries, all kinds of things. So they sell a lot of academic Christian books, and I used to go there when I was working and to kind of treat myself when I got a paycheck, and I buy myself books from Erdman's bookstore, and that was one of my favorite bookstores. Now, I haven't gone there in years because now I buy most of my Christian books from Amazon. It's cheaper. I don't like driving to Grand Rapids. I don't like leaving the house. And I can get my books a lot cheaper from Amazon than I can from Erdman's. But once in a while, maybe once a year, my wife and I will go over to Erdman's or Grand Rapids. Our son now lives there with his wife and our daughter Josie. But I really don't buy that many Christian books anymore because I have bought so many over the years I haven't read. And I'm more like just trying to read what I have. Last time I went to Erdman's, I bought all kinds of books, and I really haven't even read those. So why should I go buy more? Plus, I got books coming in the mail, and I read slowly the Christian books I do have. And there's not much coming out new anymore. You know, I've been buying Christian books for 35 years, and after a while everything kind of becomes kind of repetitious. So what I like to do is just read the Bible, or read a book on contemplation, a book on prayer, or just, I don't know, it's kind of strange these days. But once in a while I come across a good book, but anyway. Question 10, souvenir, a favorite library you've been to? Well, like I said, many years ago, when I was working and teaching adult Sunday school, I go to the library here in Holland, Michigan. There's Western Theological Seminary has a great library. Hope College here in Holland has a great library, and I used to go there a lot. But now, since I'm not working, I stopped going to church 10, 12 years ago. I basically love my own library. I have all the books I want and need right here in this house. And if I need a book or want a book, I just go to Amazon and order it. And any book I want, I just buy it. Well, I've been trying a little bit more, be more conservative, because I'm kind of getting overloaded. Like I told you, there's no more room for books in this house, and I'm trying to read the books that I have. So, but I got books coming in the mail, but I've been trying to slowly taper off. Now, I did go to thrift stores last week, and I have a lot of books that I haven't shown you guys that I will do tomorrow night. My wife is working tomorrow night. She works, and I'll do what I found at thrift stores. But my favorite library, when it comes right down to it, is my library. Coming home. Part 3. Question 11. Reunion. A book you bought or read to learn more about your hometown. Well, those who watch my videos know I've lived all over the United States. I was born in Oakland, California, but I didn't really live there. My mother moved to Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, and then we moved back to California, down to Los Angeles. And then when my mother was killed in an auto wreck, I went to live with my aunt in San Pablo, California, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area. But I always tell people that my hometown is San Francisco. Even though maybe that's not true, I still consider myself a West Coast, San Francisco Bay Area kind of person, because I did live in the Bay Area from about 1968 up until I left in 77. And that's where the years of my adolescence, or me growing up, my teenage years and my 20s. And so I consider myself a product of the West Coast, San Francisco, the beatniks, hippies, the late 60s, the Jesus movement, Pacific Ocean, psychedelics, Steve Miller Band, Jefferson Airplane, that whole trip. So the book I thought about is this book. I got it at a used book sale. Literary San Francisco, a pictorial history from its beginning to the present day by Lawrence Ferlinghetti and Nancy J. Peters. So that's why San Francisco, when it comes to kind of like where I am at literarily, it's probably out of that whole San Francisco poetry kind of writing kind of scene. Even though, like I said, I'm more influenced by Jack Kerouac, which was he was from Lowell, Massachusetts, the East Coast. So was Ginsberg and Burroughs. But I still consider myself having a West Coast kind of hometown kind of person. I wouldn't consider Holland my hometown, or Norfolk, Virginia, or Washington, D.C., but I consider my hometown San Francisco. So 12, a book of yours that is on its own adventure, a book that you loaned out that never returned, or a book you lost and forgot somewhere. Well, I didn't really have many books until I got married, because I didn't have any money. I had a few books, but I didn't have many, and I still have those books. I mean, when I left California to go to Bible college, my books fit in one little box. Now I have close to 11,000 books due to the generosity and love of my dear wife. And plus I worked in investments and retirement benefits and things. But many, many years ago, I thought of a story. Many, many years ago, when I was in California and I was really young, I was on staff at a rescue mission in Richmond, California. And I had some extra money, and I bought this 3-volume commentary called Jameson, Fawcett, and Brown. It was a 3-volume commentary. It was green binding. I know where I got the money, but I bought it. And one day I was sitting in the mission office reading it, and this really sexy black girl comes up and starts talking to me. Really, really a foxy lady. And as we were talking, she asked me what I'm reading. And so I tell her, and she says, well, I would really like to read that. And can I borrow it? And since I didn't want to refuse this really sexy girl, I said, sure, but you bring it back the next day. And she said, oh yeah, I'll bring it back the next day. So I gave her the 3rd volume, which is on the New Testament, the Gospels and the Pauline epistles, which is the most important volume. So I let her borrow it, and I never saw it again. She never came back, never saw it again. So now I had a 3-volume commentary missing one of the volumes. It was a broken set. It was worthless. Well, to me, the most valuable volume was volume 3, which was on the Gospels. So I learned from there never to loan my books out, and plus also over the years, to be honest, I have met nobody who reads the books that I read. Nobody in the churches I've been in. Most Christians I've met over the years don't read. They don't even hardly read their Bibles of anything. Like I've mentioned, there's anti-intellectualism throughout evangelical Christianity, especially among fundamentalists. Now, to get among Reformed and Calvinists, yeah, they read. But they read 17th century Puritan literature. They read Scottish theology from the 17th, 18th century. They read Reformed theology, but they don't read like Lore, Workaholic, or The Sexual Intellectual by Alexander Throux. They don't read about the San Francisco poets, or the Beatniks, Ginsberg, Kerouac, or Burroughs. They don't read Eastern Orthodox theology. They don't read, like today, my Friday reads The Life of Isaiah Berlin by Michael Ignatieff. They don't read that. Today I've been reading on the Friday reads the Book of Disquiet by Fernando. They don't read that. They don't read the Decameron by Boccaccio. And I start reading this novel by Louis Begley about Schmidt. nobody in these churches that I was a member of read these kind of books. Never read Burroughs. Not interested in the history of Paris. Not interested in the history of London, England. Surely not interested in their own American history. And I have never met anybody who's read Trollope. I mean, consistently in the churches that I've been members of. So, that's one of the reasons why I started BookTube, was to tell people about the books that I read. And I even have found people in BookTube who read the books that I read, especially the Christian books. But that's the way it is when you're a bookworm. There's all kinds of books in the world and all kinds of readers. And we all have our niche and where we fit. So that's the tag. That's what I'm reading on a Friday. Well, I'm also reading today Beyond the Wasteland, American novel in the 1960s. Barth, Hawkins, Heller, Kinsey, Pitchin, and Vonnegut by Raymond M. Olderman. I've been reading that. Been reading the chapter on Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, reading the kind of synopsis, and also Ken Kesey, his Cuckoo Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I've been reading about that. So that's the book tag. That's the Friday Reads. That's travel the world from the comfort of your living room. So this is a Friday night. It is September the 8th. It's a Friday. It's 8:08 here. And I'm hoping you'll have a good weekend. And thank you for the new subscribers. Thank you for the comments. And until next time, bye.